a gentle tear in the laws of everything, in the deepest quiet of the universe, where matter decays in silence and light folds into memory. Something impossible has stirred. Not an explosion, not a burst of color, just a gentle shiver, like a ripple traveling through dimensions too subtle for human eyes. For centuries, we believed in four forces, for unseen hands shaping the stars, stitching atoms together, guiding everything that is. But now, a new whisper has arrived, born in a forgotten lab, from a blink in an atom's death. Not loud, not violent, but strange. A mystery called X-17. Is it a mistake, a ghost, or the fingerprint of a fifth force that never wanted to be seen? Tonight, we drift past certainty. We'll follow this whisper into the dark heart of physics, where the universe is no longer obligated to make sense, where something hidden might be watching us back. Close your eyes, loosen your grip on what's real. We're not here to solve anything. We're here to wonder. A whisper in the atom, the quiet birth of a revolution in the still corridors of the Institute for Nuclear Research in Debrecen, Hungary. The air hangs heavy with purpose. Not glamour, not fame, just purpose. Among the softly buzzing fluorescent lights and dust-coated instruments, a group of physicists worked in quiet repetition, studying atomic decay patterns in beryllium-8. For most of the world, this would sound like background noise. But in these rooms, this noise is everything. It's in these tiny deaths of atoms that the universe sometimes mutters its secrets. The man at the center of this moment was Attila Krasno-Horke, a physicist who never set out to change the laws of nature. He wasn't searching for fame or rewriting history. He was, in a sense, just listening, just watching. They had set up a nuclear reaction, fire a beam of protons into a lithium-7 target, and observe what happens when beryllium-8 is created and falls apart. The decay of this isotope is well documented, predictable, obedient. It emits pairs of electrons and positrons. Nothing new, nothing dramatic, but on one cold morning, buried in pages of plotted data, something unexpected flickered, a bump, a small deviation in the angular distribution of emitted particles. At 140 degrees, more pairs than expected appeared, not by chance, not by fluctuation. This wasn't noise. It was a pattern, a signature to most. It would seem trivial, a blip, a statistical hiccup, but to the trained eye, to someone who's lived inside nuclear data for decades, it looked like a disturbance, like something had stepped through the expected decay, something invisible. The moment passed silently. No applause, no lightning strike, just blinking monitors and coffee slowly cooling in its cup. But a revolution had quietly been born. In the lonely heartbeat of beryllium-8, something had whispered, "Look closer," and they did. Asterisk the particle, without a name, what could cause such a bump? What could create an unexpected surge of electron-positron pairs at such a precise angle? The team tried to find answers in existing physics. Was it equipment error? Could magnetic fields skew the data? Was it simply an overlooked correction in the standard decay model? But nothing fit. No known interference could explain the sharp rise. And so they asked the unthinkable. What if this wasn't interference? What if it was a new particle, a mediating presence, a bridge, something that lived for only a moment, too short to see, too light to hold, but long enough to leave? A fingerprint. They estimated its mass, 17 megaelectron volts, a whisper-light weight in the world of particles, but dense enough in mystery to break the world. They didn't know what to call it, so they gave it a placeholder, X17, X4, unknown, 17 for its measured mass, but names are irrelevant. This wasn't about labeling a new toy. This was about the structure of the universe suddenly shifting. Asterisk, a fifth force, or just a glitch. Physics isn't comfortable with surprises. The standard model, our golden rulebook of particles and Forces doesn't like uninvited guests. It explains everything. Or at least, it's supposed to. But X-17 doesn't fit. It doesn't belong. Its mass is too low. Its interaction is too peculiar. It doesn't couple like a known boson. And yet, it doesn't act like nothing at all. Theoretical physicists scrambled. Some suggested it might be a protophobic boson, a particle that avoids protons but flirts with neutrons and electrons, an entirely new force carrier. That would mean the four fundamental forces were never alone, that there was always a fifth hiding, subtle, quiet, waiting for us to notice. But others pushed back. Is it real? Is it just statistical fluctuation? An artifact of equipment? A quirk in the software? In science, skepticism is not disrespect. It is survival. And so the community waited, but the whisper had already been heard, and it would not be silenced. Asterisk echoes in the quantum fog there, as something unsettling about discovering a secret in the smallest corner of nature, not because it shouts its truth, but because it whispers it with too much confidence. The anomaly around 140 degrees. It echoed like a strange voice, calling out from behind the curtain of quantum mechanics, and the team listened. The lab grew quieter, more obsessive. Every calibration was checked again. Mirrors realigned, sensors re-verified, software rewritten. From scratch, they asked themselves uncomfortable questions. Not what does it mean, but are we sure we even saw it? That's the funny thing about quantum observation. It's like watching a ghost move through fog. You see a shape, a twitch, a trail in the mist, but when you run toward it, it vanishes. Then just when you think it was nothing, the trail appears again. So they repeated the experiment, again. Thousands of particle decays, tracked with surgical precision, and the bump. It stayed. The signal kept rising, not randomly, but predictably. Statistically significant, consistent. It was almost too clean, too polite, as if the universe wasn't playing a trick, but offering a clue, like it wanted to be seen. But that raised a new question. If this particle is real, why had no one else seen it? Asterisk the silence of the giants Ciron hadn't found it. Fermilab hadn't seen it. SLAC, Brookhaven, Jefferson, nothing. The great machines of modern physics, with their billion-dollar budgets and detectors, larger than cathedrals, had not whispered a word about X-17.Y, because those colliders were looking for giant particles at high energy, born from colossal collisions and Higgs-level drama. X-17 was a ghost. It didn't need a supernova to appear, just a quiet nuclear transition, a subtle shift in a fragile isotope. In other words, they hadn't seen it, because they weren't looking where it lived, and that realization made something very clear. Maybe the universe doesn't reveal its secrets in loud places. Maybe the biggest discoveries are hiding in the smallest experiments, in underfunded labs, buried in old physics. It wasn't about energy. It was about precision, and Debrecen's quiet lab had just become the most important speck in the world. Asterisk, when the old world meets the new outside of Debrecen, most people hadn't even heard of beryllium-8, or atomic decay angles, or what it meant to spot a boson that didn't belong. But inside the walls of theoretical physics, something stirred. A strange harmony between ancient mathematics and experimental data had just appeared. Suddenly, old ideas came rushing back. Theories of fifth forces once dismissed, now pulled out of dusty drawers. Models with hidden gauge symmetries, shadow sectors, dark boson, light mediators. None of them were proven, but all of them felt eerily ready for a particle like this. One idea emerged stronger than the rest, that X-17 might not be alone. It could be part of a hidden layer of reality, not dark matter itself, but something that interacts with it, something that acts like a translator between what we know and what's watching from the dark. Asterisk, the fear of being first. There's a quiet fear in science, not of being wrong, but of being right. before everyone else. Because if you see something the world isn't ready for, you're not hailed as a prophet. You're treated like a mistake. Attila Krasnohorke knew this. He had seen how skepticism could bury careers, so they moved cautiously, refined the data, published with precision, not excitement. Their 2016 paper arrived like a whisper, observation of anomalous, internal pair creation in no grand claims, no fireworks. But between the lines, one could almost hear the tremor. Something is here. We don't know what, but we saw it, and the world slowly, curiously, began to listen. The helium confirmation to test the anomaly. They turned to another isotope, helium-4, slightly different nucleus, different decay energy, different math, but if the bump appeared here too, it would mean that whatever was causing it wasn't just a fluke of beryllium. It was real, and then it happened. The same bump, same angle, same energy window. This wasn't déjà vu. This was confirmation. Like hearing the same whisper in two different dreams, and realizing it wasn't just your mind making it up. The X17 particle, whatever it was, didn't care which atom you used. It was there. It had always been there, just hiding in plain sight. When patterns refuse to break in, the realm of high-energy physics. Anomalies often come and go, like flickers in the corner of the eye. Illusions born from data overload or mathematical wishful thinking. They sparkle for a moment and disappear, when the next experiment fails to see them. But the X17 anomaly didn't vanish. It stood firm. Repetitions brought the same angular distribution. Refinements narrowed the precision. More decays only deepened the pattern. It was like watching a ripple form over and over again on a glassy lake, never random, always returning. The community, now leaning in closer, began to whisper the word that sends tremors through the scientific world: discovery. But the word came with weight. Discovery isn't just about finding something new. It's about changing what was believed to be final. And here was the tension. X17 wasn't just new. It was wrong. By current standards. Wrong enough to be real. And the more they stared into the anomaly, the more it seemed to stare back. The ghost between the numbers X17 didn't glow or dance. It didn't emerge from cosmic rays or deep space signals. It lived in numbers, thousands of measurements, plotted one by one, building into something too consistent to ignore. Each decay like a heartbeat, each angle like a breath, and in that breath, a ghost. The numbers told a story with no words. They pointed to an interaction that behaved as if a force was present, but with no known particle to carry it. That's when the community faced a terrifying possibility that we've been living beside an invisible force this whole time, and that only now, because of a tiny shift in atomic decay, are we seeing its shadow. This force, if that's what it is, does not scream. It drifts, slips, nudges. It is not trying to break the universe, just quietly reshape it. Not a fluke, not yet a fact. The scientific process doesn't declare victory at first sight. It waits, it questions, and that's where the story of X17 became more fragile, balanced on the edge between truth and illusion. Peer reviews came, critiques were raised, replications demanded. Could detector geometry skew results? Could interference from electromagnetic background create the illusion of the bump? Was the data selection biased? Krasnohorke's team revised, tested, adjusted, and the signal stood, not as a thunderclap, but as a persistent hum. Still, the particle was not yet universally accepted. Big labs hadn't confirmed it. No Nobel buzz, no breaking headlines. But among those who understood what the numbers implied, something deeper stirred, a quiet thrill, a realization. This might not be a fluke. This might be the first thread, unraveling the tapestry. The language of light and shadow particles are like syllables in the language of nature. The standard model is our dictionary. But X17 didn't seem to be in the book. It spoke a different dialect, one between what we call matter and what we call meaning. Theoretical physicists began reaching beyond the familiar. Some suggested dark sector portals. Others whispered of light, vector bosons that might interact only in extremely narrow conditions. Ideas danced across chalkboards and simulations, like dreams looking for form. One thread was particularly seductive. That X-17 was a force carrier for an entirely new realm of particles, one we'd never touched, one we'd never even considered listening to, not because it was hidden, but because we were too loud. Asterisk why it matters more than we understand at first glance. Discovering a new subatomic particle might feel like trivia. What does it mean for you, your job, your family, your breath? But particles aren't just things. They're rules. Every force, gravity, electromagnetism, the nuclear binds, is made real by the particles that carry them. Without the photon, there is no light. Without the gluon, no atom holds together. So if X-17 is real, it means there's a new rule in the code of the universe. And that rule might unlock new ways to understand dark matter, hidden fields that shape space-time, or even errors in our assumptions about the dimension we live in. You don't need to understand quantum mechanics to feel that. You just need to know. The story of reality might be longer than we thought, and we're just now reading the next page. Asterisk echoes across the scientific world. Those words spread. Labs around the world began designing their own searches. Jefferson Lab in Virginia, Mainz in Germany, Beijing's Institute of High Energy Physics. Each aimed not to prove X-17 wrong or right, but to catch its ghost on their own terms. To listen for the whisper in different atoms. To see if the fifth force would reveal itself twice. Some experiments will take years. Others are already underway. And until then, the mystery hangs suspended in the air, unconfirmed, unrefuted, alive. Asterisk the whisper that changed the wind in the end. X-17 may not become a household name. It may not make it to textbooks or documentaries. But it has already changed something, not in science, but in possibility. It reminded us that the universe isn't a finished story. It's a poem still being written, a song still echoing in corners we haven't entered. The whisper of X-17 came not with fire, but with subtlety. And in that softness, it asked us a question. What else is out there, just beyond our sense? What truths are waiting for us to stop speaking and start listening? Asterisk the particle that dances with shadows exploring. The possibility that the X-17 particle is a bridge to the dark sector, an entire universe of hidden matter. Asterisk. Shadows we cannot touch. There is something poetic about a shadow. It's not a thing. Not quite. It is born from light, and yet it hides from it. In physics, we have long known there are shadows in the cosmos. Galaxies spin too fast. Light bends in ways we can't explain. Gravitational lensing sketches invisible giants. The universe is being shaped by something we cannot see. We call it dark matter. But the word dark isn't just about light. It's about understanding. It's a label for the unknown. For decades, we have chased it through underground labs, satellite telescopes, liquid xenon chambers. And always, it slipped away. But then came a whisper from the atom, a decay, a moment, a shape in the data. X-17. Could it be the shadow's voice? Asterisk between what we see and what we know. Imagine standing between two worlds. One is loud, radiant, full of known particles, electrons, quarks, neutrino. The other is silent, weightless, built from something else. Between them, perhaps lies a bridge, a thread, a particle. Some theories now suggest X-17 might be that bridge, a portal between visible matter and the dark sector. They call this the dark photon, not because it's made of darkness, but because it might allow interaction with the invisible, a particle that mediates communication between us. and the silent half of the cosmos, not by speech, not by sound, but by decay, by the language of atoms unraveling. If true, X-17 might be the first diplomat between light and shadow. Asterisk, a mirror made of silence. We often think of dark matter as exotic, something outside us. But what if it's right here, folded into every breath, every heartbeat, every passing cloud? We wouldn't know. Because dark matter doesn't talk to light. It drifts through walls, planets, flesh. But X-17 might reflect its presence. Like steam on glass, it may not show the thing itself, but its trace. If X-17 truly links both worlds, then our reality is not alone. It is mirrored by another, one of silence, gravity, and patience. What would it mean if the cosmos contains two realities, and we've only been living in half? Asterisk, the language of the unfelty. Do not feel dark matter, you do not taste it, you do not hear it. Yet your galaxy swims in it. Your body sails through it, night and day. It's like being inside an ocean, blindfolded, deaf, weightless, and yet, through the atomic decay of beryllium or helium, a signal might whisper, "I'm here." X-17 is not shouting, it's tapping gently. A shift in the angular emission of positron, a bump in the graph, a footstep, if confirmed. It may be the first time our world has heard a murmur from the deep silence of dark matter. Asterisk. The cosmic game of hide and seek. Dark matter does not want to be found. Or perhaps it does, but only by those who know how to ask. Our detectors are sledgehammers. Dark matter needs feathers. X-17 might be a feather. It appears only under precise energies, specific isotopes, delicate angles. The experiments that found it used light nuclei and kept the noise low. It's like listening for a whisper in the middle of a storm, and in that whisper, there is symmetry, because if dark matter hides, then maybe it also seeks. Through X-17, it may be trying to touch us back. Asterisk, theories from the edge. When something breaks our model, physicists don't panic. They dream harder. Theorists have painted entire worlds based on particles like X-17, dark bosons that live in a hidden field, fifth forces with ultra-short ranges, kinetic mixing between visible and dark, photons, extra U1 gauge symmetries, a second electromagnetic force, and even mirror matter universes with inverted parities aren't science fiction. They are equations, symmetries, predictions, all waiting for one anomaly to crack the door open. And X-17 might be that crack. It might be the first breath from the other side. Asterisk, the particles we deserve to know for over a century. Physics has chased completeness. From Newton to Einstein, to the Standard Model. We want a full deck of cards. But maybe the deck is infinite. Maybe there are other suits. X-17 reminds us, there might be particles not meant for us. Particles that existed long before life. Particles that don't care about light, or charge, or fame. But still, they exist. And by existing, they deserve to be known. To know X-17 is to honor the universe's hidden voice. It's not about control. It's about acknowledgement. We are not the only rhythm in this cosmic song. The unseen tides that move us. There is a tide in the universe that pulls galaxies into clusters, curves the paths of stars, and cradles the skeleton of the cosmos. But we do not feel it. We only see what it leaves behind. This tide is dark matter, and it may be governed, in part, by particles like X-17. We are passengers on a ship whose sails are made of gravity, but whose wind comes from invisible forces. What if X-17 is not just a bridge, but a current, a carrier of motion, momentum, meaning? It doesn't crash or howl. It glides, and as it glides, it may tug the structure of reality itself, pulling unseen strings that keep the universe from unraveling. We are moved by a force we've never met until now. Asterisk, a particle out of place. Physics is a delicate puzzle. Every piece must fit clean, logical, symmetrical. But X17 doesn't. It breaks rules. Or perhaps it reveals we never knew the real ones. Its properties don't align cleanly with the standard model. Its mass is around 17 MeV, too heavy for nothing, too light for everything else. It behaves like a bosun, but not like any bosun we've seen before. It plays a note that doesn't belong to the orchestra, and yet the melody becomes more beautiful. Maybe the problem isn't the particle. Maybe it's the score we've written. X17 is a misplaced whisper. But perhaps we're the ones listening in the wrong key. The eyes of the atom look closely, and atoms are not stable kingdoms. They are flickering realms of uncertainty. Sometimes they fall apart, not with destruction, but with transformation. This is nuclear decay, and in the quiet, precise breakdown of beryllium-8, scientists at the Hungarian Academy of Sciences saw something strange, a decay that shouldn't happen, an angle too sharp, a burst of positrons that danced in a way that implied an invisible force was there. Briefly, they didn't see X17, but they saw its shadow. In the smallest things, the truth of the universe hides. The atom is an eye, and it is starting to blink. A breath between realms. If our universe is a room filled with light, then the dark sector is the hallway outside, silent, endless, echoing. X17 may be the crack under the door, not an invitation, not a threat, just a breath. It leaks across boundaries. It escapes the confines of visible matter. It hints that the laws we've trusted might be only half complete. It's not opening a portal. It is the presence of one, and just as you can smell rain before it falls, X17 is the scent of a storm in another dimension. We have not stepped into it yet, but we've felt its breath, and that changes everything. The messenger, without a name in all mythologies. There are messengers, Hermes, Mercury, the winged ones that pass between realms. X17 may be ours. It doesn't speak, but it carries meaning. It doesn't declare, but it implies. The standard model has messengers too, photons for light, gluons for color, W and Z for weak force. But X17 doesn't fit. Some say it's a protophobic force carrier, a strange phrase meaning it avoids protons. It's shy, picky, mysterious. It may only nudge neutrons. It may only appear in certain conditions. But in that hesitation lies something holy. It is a messenger we were never meant to know. And yet, here it is, waiting. Listening to the quiet science often rewards the loud explosions, collisions, bursts of radiation. But X17 is quiet. It hides in the margins. It reveals itself only in low-energy nuclear reactions. And in that silence, there is music, because not all truths roar. Some truths are soft. The team in Hungary didn't smash atoms together. They didn't build million-dollar tunnels. They just listened carefully. And in doing so, they may have heard a hum from another layer of reality. X17 asks us not to dominate nature, but to cooperate with it, to lower our voice, to wait, to breathe. If the shadows are alive, we imagine dark matter as cold, inert, lifeless. But what if we're wrong? What if dark matter is dynamic, a civilization of particles, a culture of forces? What if X17 is a finger reaching across the void, a sign that the dark sector is not dead space, but parallel complexity, another physics, another chemistry, another architecture of being? If so, then our universe is not alone, even in its own space. We are part of a cosmic ecosystem we've never seen, and we just found the first leaf. The invitation in all of this, the anomaly, the particle, the mystery. There is a feeling, not fear, not conquest, but invitation. X17 does not explain, it asks. It invites us to step beyond comfort, to admit that our models are incomplete, to look up at the night sky and wonder what else is hiding between the stars. In every great scientific revolution, there was a whisper before the thunder. This particle, This ghost of a force may be the whisper. The rest is waiting. We are being called into the shadows, but the shadows might just be home. Asterisk the illusion of time. Is time even real? Time, the silent current that drags us from birth to death, the ticking rhythm behind every heartbeat, every crumbling mountain, every exploding star. But what if it's all an illusion? What if time isn't real? This topic dives headfirst into the greatest mystery in physics, consciousness, and philosophy. Is time fundamental, or is it just a byproduct of perception? We'll wander through wormholes, loop quantum gravity, Einstein's frozen block universe, and the terrifying idea that the past, present, and future are already written. Asterisk the clock that counts without ticking time. It ticks, it talks, it marches. But what if we told you the clock has no hands, no gears, no forward pull? What if it's not ticking at all? Our entire world is shaped around time, watches, calendars, deadlines, lifespans. But at the fundamental level, at the quantum foam, where particles dance without purpose, there is no clock. Electrons do not age. Photons never experience time. A beam of light travels for billions of years, and yet, to the photon, no time has passed. You see, time is emergent, not fundamental. It's something that appears only when you zoom out, when you measure motion, when you create a narrative. There's no cosmic stopwatch ticking from the beginning of creation. Instead, we stitched time together from motion, the swinging of pendulums, the orbit of moons, the decay of atoms. But those are just changes, not time itself. Time isn't a river, it's the illusion of a current, created by the way. Our minds interpret change. Asterisk the day the arrow bent, we were told that time moves forward from past to present, present to future. The arrow of time is sacred. But what if it bent? What if forward was just a matter of perspective, a story told by heat and entropy? Let's slow things down. You drop a glass, it shatters. Irreversible, right? But the physics underneath, the fundamental laws of motion, they don't care about direction. They work just as well in reverse. In a cosmic game of pool, the balls scatter across the table, and if you filmed it, then reversed the footage, Newton wouldn't bat an eye. The equations still hold. So where does time's direction come from? Entropy. The tendency for things to go from order to disorder, from stacked cards to scattered chaos, from whole to broken, from simple to complicated. But entropy is a statistical truth, not a law. It's not that things must decay, just that it's overwhelmingly likely. Imagine a room filled with perfume. The scent spreads out, evenly, quietly, inevitably, but technically, all the molecules could rush back into the bottle. It's just absurdly improbable, so we tell ourselves time only moves forward. But there's a catch. In the quantum world, where probabilities swirl and particles blur, the arrow can bend. Particles can reverse. Cause and effect can flip. There are moments, tiny and rare, when the universe forgets which way it's supposed to be going. And in those moments, the arrow bends. The river ripples, and time loses its direction. Asterisk time, in the eyes of the dying star far, beyond Earth's ticking clocks, beyond the beating hearts and falling leaves, there lives a place where time breathes differently. A collapsing star, a beast of fire and fusion, once brilliant, now imploding into itself, pulled by its own gravity, screaming inward. To us, watching from the safety of our cosmic distance. It seems to fall faster and faster, spiraling toward an invisible edge called the event horizon. But here's the cosmic twist. From the star's own point of view, it plunges inward smoothly, swiftly into the black hole's mouth. But from our point of view, we never see it cross. It slows, stretches, freezes, hovering at the edge forever, as if time itself refuses to let it fall. This is gravitational time dilation, Einstein's masterpiece. The closer you fall into gravity's grip, the slower time moves for you, relative to others. A clock on Earth ticks slower than a clock on a satellite. A second near a black hole could be a year on Earth, and at the edge of the black hole, time stops completely. So what does that mean for the star? From its own perspective, it disappears into the abyss. But to us, it becomes a ghost, frozen in time, a dying scream stretching into eternity. It never finishes its fall, not because of resistance, but because time itself has changed the rules. Imagine standing on a mountain, and your watch ticks slower than the watch in the valley below. That's not science fiction. It's happening right now. Even you age differently, based on altitude, motion, or mass nearby. Subtle, invisible, inescapable. Time is not a constant river. It is warped, stretched, twisted, frozen. In the eyes of a dying star, it whispers a final truth. Time is not equal. Time is not fair. Time is not real. For all. The child who remembered tomorrow, they said she was strange, quiet, always watching, always distant, like her mind floated somewhere seconds ahead of everyone else. She didn't speak much, but when she did, it chilled the room, because she didn't remember yesterday. She remembered tomorrow. She would speak of things before they happened, the knock at the door before it came, the name of a stranger before he spoke, the tears her mother would cry before they ever fell. Doctors tested her. Psychologists probed her memories, EEG's dreams. They found nothing abnormal, except the timing. Her brain fired, like it already knew, like it wasn't waiting to perceive the world. It was anticipating it. She wasn't guessing. She remembered. Some called it a gift. Others, a glitch. But in the deep corners of physics, where particles become probabilities, and time is not linear, but looped, there is a possibility, however tiny, that her mind was tethered to a different frame, one where time flowed backward, or sideways, or all at once. Physicists call it retrocausality, the idea that the future can influence the present, not by magic, but by mathematics. In some quantum experiments, choices made in the present seem to shape outcomes in the past, as if the future reaches back, changing the steps that led to it, perhaps. In the strange geometry of her brain, the veil between now and next was thinner. Perhaps her neurons were antennae, picking up signals from ahead, not through time machines or sci-fi tropes, but through a sensitivity to the universe's deeper script. She didn't see visions. She remembered moments that had not yet arrived, like reading the last page of a book, then flipping backward, knowing the ending before you reach it. And maybe we all do. In flashes, dreams, déjà vu, our minds touching the edge of a future already written, but we ignore it, dismiss it, fear it. The child didn't. She simply whispered, "It's already happened. You just haven't gotten there yet." Asterisk when the future sends echoes. Have you ever paused for no reason, felt the hairs on your neck rise, your stomach twist right before something happened? A crash, a call, a change, as if the event had sent a ripple backward through time. A whisper from the future, brushing against your now. Science doesn't like that. It wants cause before effect. A leads to B, and never the other way. But what if time isn't a one-way street? What if moments echo forward and backward? What if now is not a point, but a smear, a blending of before and after? In 1978, a physicist named John Wheeler proposed something stunning, that particles don't decide their path until they're observed. Even if that observation happens after they've passed. It's called the delayed choice experiment, and it suggests that the future can affect the past. Imagine this. A single particle is sent toward a screen. It can go through two slits, like walking two hallways at once. But whether it behaves like a wave both paths, or a particle, just one only, depends on whether you choose to observe it. After it's already passed the slits, how can the future choice determine the past behavior? Unless time isn't strict. Unless time allows whispers to travel backward. This isn't just theory, it's been tested. Verified, repeated, and it's not just in labs. People speak of dreams predicting disasters, mothers sensing danger before the phone rings, artists painting scenes that later come to pass. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe they're just more attuned to the universe's echoes. The gentle taps of destiny reaching back. Perhaps every moment sings in two directions, forward into consequence, backward into intuition, and what we call gut feeling is the subconscious catching echoes of events not yet born. Maybe that's why we hesitate at intersections, why we glance toward empty doors seconds before they open. Not fear, not instinct, just time. Misbehaving. Asterisk. The man who vanished for 30 seconds. It happened in a coffee shop in Prague. A man stood in line, reading the menu, checking his watch. The barista asked for his order. Silence. He wasn't there. Not gone, as in ran out the door. Gone, as in not physically present. People blinked, looked around. The security footage confirmed it. One frame he was there, next frame, nothing. 30 seconds later, he reappeared in the exact same spot, holding the exact same posture, as if time had skipped him. No sound, no light, no blur of movement, just cut and paste. Doctors examined him, no memory of blacking out, fainting, or teleporting. To him, it was seamless. He ordered his coffee. Everyone else was pale. It didn't go viral. The shop buried it. Skeptics blamed the camera, but the people in that room knew what they saw or didn't see. Time had a glitch, but what kind of glitch makes you invisible to the universe for half a minute? In theoretical physics, there's a concept called quantum decoherence, where a system flits between multiple states until something measures it. What if a human, just one among trillions of quantum vibrations, descend? For 30 seconds, his waveform collapsed elsewhere. Not dead, not gone, just not observed. Hidden from this reality. Some call it a micro-black hole encounter, a folding of space-time so tight and localized that it nudged him out of sync. Others whisper of time knots, where the river loops briefly, skipping over tiny eddies, like missing a line in a song, only to return and find it still playing. He didn't feel anything, but everyone else did. What does it mean for you? That maybe time isn't a ribbon. Maybe it's a web, and every once in a while a strand snaps, and someone falls through. If only for a moment. If it happened to him, could it happen to you? Would you even notice? Or would the world just skip past you, and never look back? Asterisk. The clock that refused to move in a dusty village on the outskirts of Kyoto. There's a clock that hasn't ticked in over 70 years, but it still keeps perfect time. No power, no battery, no winding, just silence and synchronicity. It belonged to an old monk who lived in the temple above the hills. He was a reclusive man, but not forgotten. He said the clock was connected to the breath of the earth. Not metaphor, not poetry. He meant it literally. When he passed away, villagers found the clock still running. They tried to study it, took it apart, put it back together. Still, no movement, no ticks, no inner gears shifting. And yet, every day, every hour, it matched. The rising sun, the ringing bells, the cosmic rhythm. Scientists dismissed it as myth. Locals knew better. Years later, a physicist visited. Not for science, for silence. He stayed for 3 days. On the third night, during a meditation, his watch stopped. His phone glitched. Time thinned. He described it like being underwater. Thoughts slowed. Breath matched the air. And when he looked up, the monk's clock shimmered. Not ticking, but humming. Pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. He left the temple changed. He wrote, "That clock doesn't measure time. It remembers. It remembers now." Could it be that time isn't just forward motion, but resonance? That some places, some objects, don't flow through time, but hold it like a tuning fork? Quantum time crystals are a real theory now. Structures that oscillate through time without energy loss. They repeat, echo, loop, but never move forward in the normal sense. What if the monk's clock was the first, not built, but awakened? A node in the grid of reality, where time doesn't pass, it just waits. If such places exist, what happens? When you stay too long, do you age slower, or not at all? Do you sync so perfectly with the universe that you become a part of it? What if those we call enlightened aren't ahead of us, but still enough to stop time? Maybe we're the ones rushing past, and maybe time isn't running out. Maybe it's just standing quietly, waiting for us to catch up. Asterisk, the second that lasted a week in the middle of a traffic intersection in Buenos Aires. A woman was caught on CCTV glancing at her wristwatch. She was waiting to cross. A blink, a step, and then her foot froze mid-air. Pedestrians stopped. The wind paused. The traffic lights flickered. Only the cameras recorded the anomaly. To her, it was a blink. To the world, she didn't move for 7 days. Doctors thought it was a seizure. Psychologists called it dissociation. But the footage showed something else. Every fiber of her body, her hair, her fingers, the wrinkles in her clothes, were locked in place, not swaying, not breathing, not even blinking. She was a living photograph, and on the 7th day, exactly at 4:41 p.m., she took the next step, mid-stride, mid-breath, mid-thought, confused, terrified, but alive. She screamed when she saw the date on a newspaper. Felt robbed, violated by time, because to her, nothing had happened, but to the universe, she was absent. For 604,800 seconds, scientists tried to replicate it. They studied the spot, the angle of the sun, the geomagnetic activity. One anomaly stood out. A minor fluctuation in Earth's Schumann resonance, the frequency of the planet's electromagnetic field. It had spiked ever so slightly at the moment she paused. Could she have been caught in a natural time bubble? It's not fiction anymore. Theoretical models now suggest time might be a field, just like gravity or electromagnetism. And like any field, it can wobble, fold, or stall. Some areas of spacetime may contain standing waves, regions where time slows to a crawl. She might have stepped into one without knowing. Or worse, maybe she was chosen. What if our minds can be tuned accidentally to resonate with time itself? Could trauma, emotion, consciousness serve as a key? And when that key turns, the world stops for just you. Imagine watching the sun hang in the sky like a painting, hearing no sound, feeling no breath, only the endless moment. A second that stretches until the universe says, okay, you may continue. But what if it never lets go? What if somewhere right now, someone else is stuck? In that moment, mid-step, mid-thought, frozen in a second that never ends. And we just walk past them. Asterisk, the echoes from tomorrow. It began in a quiet lab in Zurich. An experimental physicist named Dr. Alina Kroll was working on a prototype called a temporal harmonic oscillator, a machine designed to detect gravitational waves from nearby cosmic events. Nothing too revolutionary, until one night, at 3:11 a.m., the device picked up a voice, muffled, distorted, barely audible, but definitely human. It repeated a string of numbers. Then, her name, Alina, 497 Delta, 7 hours. Stopped the reactor. She froze. There was no reactor, no known reason for alarm, so she dismissed it. Filed it under static interference, but the next morning, news broke of a facility in Belgium. A particle experiment gone wrong. An underground reactor had gone critical. The coordinates matched, the location, the time, and the exact phrase used in the warning. Her machine had warned her 7 hours in advance. But no signal like that had ever been recorded before. No conventional transmission. No explanation. It shouldn't be possible, yet it was. She reran the system. This time in an isolated Faraday chamber. Zero radio interference. Vacuum sealed. Pure silence. And again, a voice. Do not accelerate it further. She obeyed. 2 days later, another lab, working with faster parameters, suffered a failure. Their machine imploded. She started documenting the messages. Some were coordinates, some were dates, some were pleas, some were in her own voice, not past voice recordings, not old audio files, future statements, words she hadn't spoken yet, and one stood out. Stop. He doesn't know he's already dead. Chilling. Because the next day, her assistant, a young intern, was involved in a head-on collision on his way to the lab. Instant gone. She listened to the message again, over and over. Could she have stopped it? Was it fate? Or was someone, somewhere, trying to break the loop? See, time doesn't have to be linear. Not in quantum theory. Not anymore. In a certain class of physics models, retrocausality is allowed. The idea that an effect can occur before its cause. Think about it. What if the universe, in its chaotic dance, occasionally leaves echoes of what hasn't happened, not predictions, not prophecies, but ripples, like thunder heard before lightning, a backwards wave of consequence crashing into the present. Maybe our dreams, our déjà vu, our cold chills, are fragments of tomorrows already screaming to be heard, and machines like Krill's. They're just the first ears we've built that are finally quiet enough to listen. The real question is, if you heard tomorrow whisper, would you listen? And if you did, what would you change? Asterisk. The photograph with no origin. It was a simple, black and white image. Uneventful, blurry, almost mundane. A man in a trench coat, standing in a fog-drenched alley beneath a flickering lamp. One hand in his pocket, the other holding something, a pocket watch. Maybe it arrived in a sealed envelope to a retired journalist in Hamburg. No return address, no note, just the photograph. Strange, maybe not. Until the journalist realized something. The alley didn't exist. He searched the entire city. No alley matched the lampost's design. No intersection mirrored the stone texture on the wall. The shadows were wrong. The light was wrong. Even the fog, it shimmered oddly. He posted the image on a niche forum of urban explorers. Within days, reports began flooding in from different continents. I've seen that place in a dream. That alley was in my mother's old paintings. She died in 1963. That's impossible. I took that photo, but I never developed the role. They dubbed it the Alley of the Fold. Not a place in space, but a wrinkle in time. Here's the thing, the photo was analyzed by experts. No signs of manipulation. The paper, Kodak, 1946 batch, but the shadows in the photo, they aligned with a solar angle that wouldn't exist until 24/9. It was a paradox printed in ink. A message from nowhere. But it didn't stop there. Someone tried to scan it. The digital version glitched every time. Pixels bled. Lines broke. Until the image showed a different man, same alley, same coat, different face. Now more photos began to surface. Same location, different moments. As if the alley was a fixed set, and time was the only actor changing. Some photos were in color, others carried timestamps, from dates yet to come, but there was always one thing in common. A man with the pocket watch, and soon. Those who had viewed the image began reporting impossible dreams, walking through the alley, hearing ticking, seeing themselves on the other side of the lamp, watching. Then one man vanished. A fringe time researcher. He claimed he'd found the alley, deep in an abandoned quarter of Oslo. His last message, a single photo he uploaded to a hidden server. This one had 2 people in it. One was him. The other was the viewer. Anyone who opened the image saw themselves in the second figure. even when viewed from different accounts, locations, or machines. No watermark, no deepfake, just a timeless moment that shifted reality to include you. Theories exploded. Some claimed the photo was an anchor, a fixed point in the universe where time folds in on itself. A place that shouldn't exist, but somehow does. Others said it was a test. A breadcrumb trail left by time travelers who wanted to see who would notice, and a few. They believed the photo was alive, that looking at it meant becoming part of it. What if memories could embed themselves in objects? What if time could hide within photographs, waiting to be remembered? The photo has no source, no camera, numbered, witness, no past. It only has you, and maybe. That was always the point. Asterisk. The time capsule that returned before it was buried was supposed to be a celebration, a high school centennial in a sleepy town in Oregon. The alumni gathered, the mayor gave a speech, and the students buried a large time capsule beneath the flagpole sealed with concrete, marked with a bronze plate, to be opened, 2075. The year was 22-5, but in the spring of 2024, a year before the burial, a young boy named Elliot found something strange beneath the exact same flagpole. While digging to plant a new tree for Arbor Day, he struck metal dot at first. Everyone thought it was a leftover pipe or sprinkler fixture, but when they pulled it out, they found a large, rust-free steel container. Its sides were engraved, Centennial Capsule, Class of 2025 to be opened. 2075. The school officials thought it was a prank, until they opened it. Inside were exactly 167 items, each one matching the inventory list that would later be written by the organizing committee in August of 2025. Among them, a signed basketball from the girls' varsity team, a USB drive with a video montage of graduation day, a sealed letter addressed to the future principal, and a black notebook containing predictions from students about flying cars, climate, even marriage, hopes. But here's the twist. Some of the predictions came true. One student had written, "I bet in 2024, Mr. Hamill will crash his bike into the library steps again." That happened April 3rd, 2024. 3 weeks before Elliot found the capsule. Another wrote, "In 2024, the old elm tree will fall." In a windstorm, the tree fell during a storm in February. How? How could they write predictions for 2024 in a capsule buried in 2025? Yet it was found in 2024, already rusted and aged. The USB video posed a deeper question. When plugged in, it played smoothly, a montage of graduation speeches, senior pranks, emotional goodbyes, faces smiling at the camera, some of whom hadn't yet enrolled at the school as of 2024. Most haunting of all was the final clip. A girl stands in front of the school gate at sunset. She looks into the camera and says, "We had to send it back. You wouldn't believe us otherwise. But if you're watching this, you're already part of it. Don't let them dig again." The second capsule is different. There was no second capsule on record, at least not yet. But the city council, panicked by the discovery, voted to cancel the 2025 capsule ceremony altogether. No burial ever happened, which left one terrifying question. How did the capsule exist in the first place? Some believed it was a fabrication, that the future had looped into the past through an undiscovered fold in space-time, and the capsule was sent back to alter what would have been. Others believed it wasn't the capsule that traveled back, but the entire school timeline, that the act of burying a moment somehow warped the narrative of reality, allowing objects from one version to bleed into another. Even stranger, the bronze plaque that marked its burial was found in the principal's office drawer in 2023, with no explanation, and no one remembering placing it there today. The capsule sits in a locked museum vault, sealed again, never opened. Some claim it hums at night. Some say the items inside are subtly changing, a new signature appearing here, a faded photograph becoming clearer. But one final note has driven the town into silence. Inside the sealed letter to the future principal was a message written in unfamiliar handwriting. You will never bury what's already been dug. The astronaut who returned from a mission that never launched it was July 18, 2023. At 3:14 a.m., a distress signal was intercepted by 3 radio astronomers monitoring deep space anomalies in Chile. The frequency was encrypted with an ancient NASA cipher, one that hadn't been used since 1997. After hours of decoding, the message emerged. This is Commander Alan Rice. Re-entry successful. I'm alive. Request recovery. Coordinates transmitting. They were confused. NASA had no missions that day. There had been no recent launches. And worse, no Commander Alan Rice was listed in any registry since the early 2000s, but the coordinates pointed to the Nevada desert. By 6:11 a.m., a Black Hawk chopper landed at the site, and there, walking alone through the dust, wearing a faded, pre-2000s era NASA suit, was a man who matched the fingerprint and DNA records of Commander Rice. He was alive, coherent, but deeply disturbed. They brought him in during his debriefing. He claimed he'd launched aboard a secret shuttle named Alethea 9 in 2001, on a deep space observation mission toward the heliopause, the edge of our solar system. But Alethea 9 didn't exist. No documents, no flight logs, no photographs, no colleagues to corroborate when pressed. He described the interior of the craft in exacting detail, the analog dials, the gyroscopic system, even the smell of the insulation foam used in 1990s shuttle builds. He named crewmates, reported their tragic deaths during a solar flare in 2003. And then he said something else. The stars weren't where they were supposed to be. He claimed the constellations shifted drastically, that navigation failed, and by 2006, he realized he wasn't just outside the solar system, he was outside his own time. The onboard AI, which he referred to as Lucian, initiated emergency stasis. He slept for what he estimated was 14 years. When he awoke, the shuttle was descending toward Earth. Its hull was scarred by micrometeorites, its systems damaged, yet functioning just enough to guide him into the desert on a planet that looked like home but didn't feel like it. He knew the faces of old friends, but their lives were wrong. His former supervisor had died in 1999, but in this world, he lived until 2011. Landmarks were slightly off. Even the moon, he claimed, had a faint scar along its equator that he'd never seen before. NASA denied everything. They quarantined him, deemed him mentally unstable, and quietly released him with a fabricated backstory. But journalists leaked fragments of his testimony. Photographs surfaced, including one from 1998 of the original Alethea project proposal. Declassified years later, it was cancelled due to funding, but in the proposal was a signature, Commander Alan Rice. The most chilling artifact, however, was the damaged flight recorder extracted from the desert site. When analyzed, it revealed cosmic radiation levels only found beyond the Kuiper Belt, and audio logs featuring Rice speaking with another crew member named Sergeant Diane Holt. Her name, like the shuttle, appears nowhere in any official database. But Rice remembers her. He remembers her final words. If you make it back, make sure it's the right version of home. To this day, Rice lives under a pseudonym in a small town in Utah. He avoids screens, refuses to look at the stars, and insists this world is close, but not his. And sometimes, when the sky is clear, he claims to see the shimmer of something still watching from above, a second version of Alethea, still out there, waiting for someone to remember it existed. Asterisk the lost signal that predicted a tragedy weeks before it happened on May 2, 2016. At precisely 4:13 a.m. GMT, a small, deep space listening post in Norway codename Eventide Array received a peculiar frequency burst. It lasted 19 minutes, encrypted, repeating, inhuman, at first. It sounded like broken Morse code, but the rhythm was off-staggered, almost biological. Like the pulse of a failing heart, the team isolated the audio, ran it through a harmonic spectrogram, and uncovered a chilling pattern. Embedded in the signal was a human voice, digitally warped, repeating 4 words in a whisper. Turn back. It's coming. The voice was traced to a tone signature identical to that of Dr. Helena Grant, a physicist who had disappeared in 1994 while working on time-domain quantum echoes. Her disappearance had remained unsolved until now. The array team, baffled, kept the discovery classified, suspecting a prank or interference. But 11 days later, on May 13, 2016, Flight 708 from Berlin to New York vanished mid-air over the North Atlantic. No distress signal, no radar anomalies. Just 187 people gone. 2 days later, a new signal arrived. This time, it was stronger. It didn't repeat. It was a one-shot burst, exactly 13 seconds long, translated and filtered. It contained precise coordinates, right over the zone where Flight 708 vanished. The Eventide team panicked. They tried contacting international agencies. Most dismissed it. But one researcher and astrophysicist named Ilya Umrov recognized something deeper. Within the transmission's carrier wave was a time stamp, except it wasn't one we could read easily. It was from a future calendar, a temporal format, only found in experimental simulations of theoretical AI, run by black hole clocks. The timestamp was dated August 29, 2041, a date still decades ahead, and next to it was a message, a haunting one. Convergence error, casualty loop, stabilizing, failed iteration, 187 confirmed. Next event, June 3, 2016. Komarov quit his position the next day. He now lives in a remote monastery in Romania, where he spends his time writing a journal titled The Many Failures of Time. What unnerved him the most, he later confessed to a reporter, was not that the message predicted a tragedy, it was that we weren't the first version of the world to receive it. He believed the signal came from a reality where Flight 708 had already vanished many times, and someone, or something, kept trying to warn us, to tweak the variables, to adjust the loop. But the timeline kept snapping back. Always 187 lives lost. Always on May 13th. Until, perhaps, somewhere in a future we haven't reached, they finally break free. The Eventide array was dismantled in 2019, officially due to funding, but rumors suggest the staff were silenced. That one last signal came through in 2018, only 3 seconds long, a whisper, "You have 4 left." And since then, 4 unexplained disasters have occurred across air, sea, and space, each precisely 13 days apart. Asterisk, the child who dreamt of equations that solved themselves in the quiet mountain town of Orland, Norway. A child named Elias Thomason was born on a night when the sky turned green. Not the northern lights, but something far stranger. Witnesses say it looked like liquid code dripping through the atmosphere. Elias didn't cry when he was born. EHUMMED. By age 3, he was writing complex symbols on the walls, symbols resembling Feynman diagrams, multidimensional tensor loops, and unrecognized mathematical constructs. He had never been taught to write. Doctors and psychologists observed him for years, categorizing him as exceptionally gifted, but Elias didn't speak until he was 6. His first words, "The answers keep waking me up." By then, he had filled 7 notebooks with equations that, when reverse engineered, matched several unsolved problems in physics. The hierarchy problem, quantum gravity unification, a new model for space-time, topology. But what puzzled researchers most was not the equations themselves, but how they appeared. Elias claimed, "He dreamt them. In my sleep, they're alive," he said. "They build themselves. I just remember." He described a place he called the Black Classroom, where he said the walls weren't walls, but vibrating thoughts, and the floor bent like glass over a sea of stars. He said there was a woman with a silver face who taught him silently by projecting feelings into his chest, and that every time he woke up with a solution, he felt like someone else had lost a memory so he could gain one. By age 9, he stopped writing. He claimed the classroom was disappearing. The door won't open now. He whispered to his parents one night, "It's closing because they know you've noticed me." That same month, his notebooks began to vanish one by one. Not misplaced, not stolen, vanished. With surveillance cameras showing static bursts exactly 13 seconds before each disappearance. The paper inside had been tested prior. It wasn't just normal ink. The symbols were composed of microscopic arrangements of graphene that formed self-correcting patterns. This is impossible by conventional printing or handwriting. It was as if the ink knew the future layout of the page and aligned itself accordingly. When a theoretical physicist, Dr. Haruto Enji, saw one of the notebooks, he fell silent for 2 days. Then he called a closed-door meeting with 10 researchers. Afterward, he resigned from academia and moved to a silent retreat. His final paper, never published, was titled Mathematics as a Dreaming Entity. As of today, Elias is 17. He doesn't speak anymore. He stares at the stars at night and hums the same 3-tone melody that began the day he was born. When asked what he dreams of now, he simply wrote one sentence on a whiteboard: "I don't have dreams anymore. I am one." And the room temperature dropped by 3 degrees Celsius the moment he wrote it. The archives of the Forgotten Watchers beneath the Humboldt University of Berlin, past the official library, and down a sealed corridor forgotten since the Cold War. There exists a door made not of wood, but compressed stone and obsidian. No handles, no hinges, no keyhole. Only a faint emblem etched into its center, a closed eye, wrapped in a serpent, biting its own tail. This place is not on any blueprint, and yet, according to decrypted correspondences between former Stasi agents, behind this door lies the archive of the Forgotten Watchers, a collection of writings, artifacts, and biological samples that are too anomalous, too dangerous, or simply too conscious to exist in the world of man. These Watchers, as the files describe, are not human. They are conceptual custodians, entities bound to the maintenance of reality's failsafes. Each Watcher specializes in a layer of reality. One oversees memory erosion, one guards the threshold of probability, one keeps time from unraveling backward, and only one needs allowed to sleep. The archive does not contain their physical forms. Instead, it contains their leaked behaviors, pages that write themselves, paintings that age in reverse, mirrors that refuse to reflect your face if you've lied in the last hour. A 1974 memo, written by Soviet defectors, claims that the US and USSR had a silent pact not to disturb this archive again after an event referred to as the reversal. What was the reversal? The memo doesn't say, but it does include one horrifying line. The moon disappeared for 7 seconds. Only those who knew the truth noticed. In 1999, an MIT doctoral student named Ray Baldwin uncovered a reference to this archive while researching ancient encryption methods hidden in music theory. The codes pointed to a pattern of disappearances, specifically of individuals who had dreamt similar things at exactly the same time in different countries. Every 11 years, he traced them all to one epicenter, Berlin. Ray never published his work. He went missing 6 weeks later. His final audio recording, recovered from a corrupted microcassette, contained this whisper. I knocked. Something knocked back. A group known only as the Velvet Circle, composed of rogue archivists and former intelligence officers, claims the archive is still active. They believe the Watchers aren't asleep. They're watching us to see if we remember what they forgot. One passage allegedly recovered from the archive reads, "When humans learn to dream in groups, The watchers will open the second archive, and reality will take attendance. No photos, no documents. But rumors say one item inside the archive bleeds ink on its own, and if you try to burn it, it writes one word across the flames. No. The man who found a camera in his mind, it started as a dream. Every night, at exactly 3:37 a.m., he'd find himself staring through the same set of eyes, but they weren't his. He was watching someone else, a woman he didn't know, in a room he'd never entered, writing letters he could never read, but in waking life, the déjà vu bled through. He'd walk by a newsstand, see a headline about a missing woman in Finland, the photo, the same woman from his dreams, her room, identical, down to the cracked glass of her reading lamp and the faded wallpaper behind her desk. The man Caleb Varnum was a cognitive scientist, a rationalist, a skeptic, until the dreams turned interactive. One night he blinked in the dream, and she paused her writing. She looked up straight into the dream camera. "Why are you watching me?" she asked. He woke up screaming. Doctors thought it was stress, sleep paralysis, residual psychosis from overwork. But Caleb didn't accept that. He went further into meditation, deep neurofeedback, even illegal neurooptic stimulants once tested by the CIA. And that's when he found it in a controlled session with brain imaging. His scans revealed a cluster of non-native biooptic nodes in his visual cortex, tiny organic structures that shouldn't exist in any human brain. Not tumors, not scars, lenses, not natural biological lenses, wired directly into his consciousness. A camera inside the mind. He wasn't dreaming of the woman. He was literally seeing through her world, as if a feed was being sent to him through an invisible neural pipeline. More research revealed something terrifying. Dozens of others across the globe, mostly children and artists, reported similar experiences. All of them shared the same rare genetic anomaly, a dormant protein chain known as GZ144B, once believed to be junk DNA, but in those who expressed it, there were signs of strange phenomena, empathic bleed-throughs, remote dreaming, shared visual hallucinations, and occasionally, mental recordings. These weren't fantasies. The camera was real, and it wasn't just watching her, it was watching him too, because one night, during another dream, she looked into the dream camera again and said, "I'm not writing letters. I'm taking notes. You think you're observing me, Caleb, but you're just a test subject. They're watching through you." When Caleb woke, he wasn't in his home. He was lying on a cold hospital bed, surrounded by unfamiliar machines, each pointed directly at his head. A mirror above him reflected something else, a second pair of eyes blinking independently inside his pupils. He hasn't been seen since, but scattered across deep web forums are encrypted posts, uploaded every 88 hours, from a user known as DoubleVision88. Each post contains a frame, a single still from someone else's life. And one phrase at the bottom, "There's more than one camera." Asterisk, the town that refused to be filmed tucked in the folds of northern Maine, buried beneath a canopy of evergreens and fog. There exists a town that appears only when it wants to. Its name isn't listed on any map. There are no satellite records, no Google Earth sightings, no postal code, no census history. The locals simply call it Kithmir. What's strange isn't its absence from documentation. Plenty of forgotten places fade with time. What's strange is how violently Kithmir rejects observation. Try to fly a drone over it, and your signal scrambles midair. Bring a camera, and it shuts off the moment you cross the town limits. Even analog film, overexposed into pure white, like trying to photograph a sun that isn't there. It started back in the 1960 South. A documentary crew wandered too deep while chasing autumn foliage. They captured one frame, just one of an old wooden sign, "Welcome to Kithmir," where no one watches. The next frame was static. The next day they were missing. The next week, their van was found by a logging crew, its interior layered in frost, in mid-July. Their equipment still powered on. Hard drives intact, but empty. Locals tell stories, of course, hushed ones, that Kithmere was once a military testing site for neurovisual cloaking, that the town developed a technology that trained reality itself to reject surveillance, not by blocking it, but by unexisting around it, a feedback void. If you tried to record it, Kithmere wouldn't hide. You would forget. Investigators, journalists, even thrill-seeking YouTubers have all tried to find it. Some returned with blank memory cards and unexplainable headaches. Others didn't return at all. One former FBI agent claimed to have made it in. He spoke anonymously on a podcast, his voice trembling. It's not that the town is secret. It's that it demands secrecy. It has an immune system. And observation is the virus. What he described inside was stranger still. Houses that rearranged their interiors when you turned your back. People who spoke in echoes, not of their voices, but their thoughts. Street signs that changed direction the moment you blinked. And at the center of town, a building that looked like a church, but hummed with the rhythm of a living organism. I looked through the stained glass window, he said, and saw myself folder, confused, trapped, watching myself watching. The next week, the podcast episode vanished. The host denied it ever existed. The guest, no trace. But if you listen closely on cold nights, on shortwave radios detuned from any known frequency, you might catch whispers from Station K, a pirate broadcast that flickers through white noise. It only repeats one sentence, over and over. If you try to see Kithmere, Kithmere will see you back. The invisible library of the Skywatchers, theirs, a story that pilots tell in whispers, somewhere between the humming of engines and the lull of cloud banks, a place not marked on any air map, not charted in any aviation manual, an invisible structure, suspended at 40,000 feet, floating above the storms, beneath the stars. They call it the library that watches the sky, not because it looks down from the heavens, but because it was built by those who never wanted to descend. The Skywatchers, a secret society of airborne thinkers, rogue physicists, exiled mathematicians, and rogue archivists who vanished from universities in the 1970s. Each one believed the ground-corrupted truth, that libraries on Earth were too vulnerable to fire, to censorship, to forgetting, so they built one. In the clouds, not a zeppelin, not a station, not a plane, a construct of frequencies and frozen space, an atmospheric cathedral of knowledge that defies gravity through a constant loop of unreadable thought. How do you find it? You don't, it finds you, but only if your mind contains questions it's never heard before. Pilots who have allegedly stumbled into its airspace report bizarre malfunctions. Radios flood with voices, reciting equations backwards. Compasses point not north, but inward. Cockpits fill with the smell of paper soaked in ozone. Asterisk then, a flash. And suddenly, their aircraft is no longer flying through space, but coasting through sentences. Windows shimmer with words. Pages flip where clouds should be. And the plane is pulled, gently, into something that feels like both a library and a consciousness. One pilot, codename Raven 8, wrote in a declassified log, "There were no walls, just strata of air stacked like parchment, wind shaped into bookmarks, entire languages built from cloud formations. I understood books that weren't written in any alphabet. I read a memory I never lived, and it cried when I left. The library is sentient, they say. It watches the world quietly, patiently, collecting human knowledge before it disappears. Not in a traditional way, but as emotional residue. It gathers the ideas we almost spoke, the dreams we didn't remember, the theories scratched into napkins and lost in the wash. It is a preservation engine for what reality tries to erase. But it has one rule. You may enter only once, and if you return, you must give something back. Not a book, not a word, but a memory. A real one. Something precious. The more vivid, the more valuable. One physicist returned, years later, unable to remember his daughter's face. Another lost his native language, forever speaking in metaphors he couldn't control. Yet they smiled, always, when they spoke of the library, as if they'd seen something truer than life. Something the ground would never believe. And some nights, at high altitudes over the Pacific, pilots report hearing static in their headsets. A faint, warm whisper. The wind is full of secrets. Come read the sky before it forgets. Asterisk the door with no building, in a forgotten stretch of the Mongolian plateau, where the wind scrapes the earth like a tuning fork, where no roads lead and no satellites linger, there stands a door. Just a door. No frame, no walls, no hinges. Number, building dot. And yet, it's locked. It's made of obsidian black metal, cool to the touch, etched with symbols that rewrite themselves every 73 seconds. Sometimes they resemble constellations, sometimes equations, sometimes names, your name, villagers, from a distant outpost 40 miles away, whisper about it. They call it the unbuilt gate. Legend says it appears to those who almost discover something forbidden, scientists on the verge of breaking a rule in physics, children who see too far into the stars, poets who stumble into equations. One astrophysicist, Dr. Ilya Voss, discovered it after she began hearing her own voice inside gravitational wave recordings. She drove for 7 days, guided only by a recurring dream of a black rectangle standing on yellow sand. When she arrived, she recognized it instantly. She had drawn it years ago in her childhood journal. A door, standing alone, opening into sky. At first, the door doesn't react. You can touch it, walk around it, even pass your hand through empty space behind it. But the moment you stop thinking logically, the moment you allow impossibility to be a valid answer, it opens, but not outward, not inward, not even through. It opens conceptually. Your thoughts start to drift, not like dreaming, more like remembering something you were never told. It's like reading a page in a book you've never seen but knowing how it ends. Some describe it as stepping into a dimension of lost decisions, the versions of you that turned left instead of right, stayed instead of left, believed instead of doubted. Others say the doorway leads to a hallway of suspended questions, long corridors of ideas, humanity abandoned too early. Like, what if time is a byproduct of forgetting? What if gravity is just a motion at scale? What if you are being remembered by the universe, not the other way around? You don't walk through this door. You're walked through by something older than choice. When you come back, because not everyone does, you will carry something. A formula etched behind your retina. A note in a language only your dreams understand. An image you can't unsee. Yourself. Watching yourself. From the other side. There's a quiet rumor in theoretical circles that the unbuilt door is a test, left by an older civilization that grew tired of linear time. They didn't build a temple. They didn't write a book. They left one door. Just a door, to see if anyone else would learn how to ask without words. Asterisk the shadow of a machine that was never built there. Are places where the earth hums a little differently. Not louder, not noisier, just different. A tone beneath the tone, like a song playing on a frequency no ear can catch. But every cell still hears it. At one such place, deep in the Atacama Desert, under the driest sky in the world, a satellite image captured something. Impossible. Not an object, not a structure, but a shadow. The shadow was massive, over 700 meters across, angular, precise, the shape of machinery, except there was no machine, no physical object stood there to cast it. No drone passed above, no cloud, no glitch, no natural trick, just the outline of something too real to ever be built. The image was buried, quickly. Agencies dismissed it as a sensor smear. But not everyone forgot. A fringe physicist named S.A. Tam found it in a satellite archive. His obsession grew. He triangulated the coordinates, sold everything he had, and disappeared into the desert. What he claimed to find was the impression of a machine. The land was warped in subtle geometry, rocks arranged in spirals that spiraled into other spirals. The sand fell in straight lines, even against the wind. The magnetic field was braided, as if a massive system had once operated there, not physically, but temporally. He began calling it the Shadow Engine. According to his research, this machine wasn't meant to exist here, not even in our version of time. It belonged to a hypothetical reality where gravity wasn't a force, but a permission granted only to those who understood memory as architecture. Let that sit for a moment. Memory as architecture. Imagine if the universe didn't exist as space or time, but only as remembered connections. In that reality, machines wouldn't be built with parts. They would be constructed from shared truths. They would run not on energy, but on consensus. And once forgotten, they wouldn't vanish. They'd leave shadows, not cast by light, but by the memory of their function. What did the Shadow Engine do? Some say it refined questions. Others believe it measured the weight of possibilities, not what was, or what could be, but what almost was. There's one recorded message, a say transmitted before he went silent. I think it was a machine for mapping regret. It shows us the cost of not becoming what we almost became. Later visitors to the site report hallucinations. They feel the vibration of metal that isn't there. They hear voices of themselves, older or younger, speaking in languages they never learned. Some even claim to see the shadow shift, as if the machine is slowly remembering itself into existence, and the desert, it waits, patiently, like a wound healing in reverse. Asterisk the time traveler who left nothing behind. There is a story buried in declassified tapes, a whisper between governments, between soldiers who never got medals, and scientists who left no citations behind it. Begins with a man who arrived, but never truly came. He had no passport, no fingerprints, no dental records, no iris match, no DNA that mapped to any global database. But he spoke perfect English, flawless French, dead languages, too, Sumerian, ancient Vedic, Linear B. He claimed to be from a place that never existed, and when that couldn't be reached. Not the future, not the past, but a branch probability, trimmed away before it ever bloomed. And he wasn't here to change anything. He was here to observe what we didn't become. They called him Subject RHE, was detained under a black project facility beneath Antarctica, a place with no name. Only a symbol, a broken hourglass, tipped sideways, leaking upward. He never resisted, never asked to leave. Every night, he drew diagrams, not machines, not cities, but scenarios. Each sketch began the same way, a single person, faced with a choice, and the entirety of the universe bending around that decision. One drawing showed a boy at a train station, choosing not to board. From that singular hesitation, an entire solar system blinked out a phase. Another, a woman choosing not to say I love you. From that silence, a war never happened. A cure was never found. And 20 billion minds were never born. When asked who he was, he smiled. I'm the ghost of what you didn't choose. But then one night he vanished, not escaped, erased. No doors opened, no cameras glitched. His very mass evaporated, as if the universe had retracted his file. Where he once sat, there was only a thin layer of fine black powder, soft as charcoal, and a single line scrawled on the floor. This was not the first time I wasn't here. Later, a physicist reviewed his sketches. She overlaid them with particle behavior in the Large Hadron Collider. They matched every arc, every intersection, down to the microsecond. Somehow, Subject R had mapped the decision trees of matter itself. Not just people, but protons. The chilling part. Every tree ended in silence. A blank page. No continuity. No echo dot. Just dot dot dot. Oblivion. As if his presence had been a warning that the choices we make don't just shape our world, but determine whether it continues at all. We haven't seen another like him since. But occasionally, at moments of deep hesitation, at airports, at bridges, in back alleys, someone will look up, as if feeling the air shift, and whisper to no one, "Not this time." The clock that hears your thoughts before you think them was found in the attic of a home that had never been owned, tucked in a crate behind layers of dust, resting atop a folded newspaper from a day that never happened. June 31st, 1962. The device was simple in appearance, an antique wall clock with hands of tarnished brass. No maker's mark, no gears that ticked, yet it never once stopped ticking, not in real time, but in mental time. Whoever held it found that their next thought had already been counted. The clock's second hand would twitch a split second before your mind twitched. Think of the color red. The clock jolts. Reach for the glass. It twitches again. Decide to put it down. The minute hand slides before you even move. Not reaction, prediction, but deeper. Researchers called it presynaptic drift. But it wasn't just reading intentions. It was creating the impression that you had them. At first it was subtle, a desire to hum a melody you didn't know, an urge to call someone you hadn't spoken to in years. Then more dangerous suggestions crept in. Drive a little faster. What if you just let go? They tested it in a room with no distractions, hooked up EEG sensors to a man trained in Zen silence. He was instructed not to think. The clock spun wildly, and moments later, he screamed. Something spoke before I could decide. The device was locked away, but it never stopped ticking, in sealed concrete, buried under magnetic shielding, inside a vacuum. Still, tick. The scariest part? No two clocks showed the same time. Each one seemed attuned to its observer, a timeline spinning for each mind it encountered. What they discovered next changed. Everything. When placed near an animal, nothing. When placed beside a coma patient, tick. When held to a mirror, both clocks ticked, even when no one was in the room, as if the clock was remembering minds that had passed through, as if thought had a resonance. And this clock was its tuning fork. One theorist claimed it was a relic from a civilization that didn't use language. They communicated through pre-thought impulses, vibrations that ripple backward through time. In their culture, speaking was a form of delay. The true meaning came before the word. That clock was their last remnant, an instrument designed not to measure time, but to capture the soul's prelude. And sometimes, when it's quiet, really quiet, the clock starts ticking to a heartbeat. Not yours, not anyone's you know, but one you haven't met yet. Asterisk. The whisper engine that powered a dead civilization. There are machines you build to run, and then there are machines you whisper to. The kind that listen not to sound, but to the tremble of intention in the air. Beneath the ruins of a forgotten city, one that doesn't appear on any satellite map, even though its shadow shows up every 7 days. There hums a machine buried beneath salt and dust. The people who built it left no name for themselves. No language etched into stone. No bones in the soil. Only this, a hollow, pulsing chamber that reacts when someone thinks too loudly. The whisper engine is not massive. It isn't a generator or a turbine. It looks like a spider of brass, its limbs reaching in every direction, attached to columns of polished obsidian. When explorers first entered the chamber, their footsteps echoed unnaturally, not louder, but delayed, as though time inside the engine pulsed differently. One of them, a linguist named Caro, spoke, just to test the echo. But there was none. Instead, the machine shivered, not from sound, from attention. They tried everything. No buttons, no panels, no power cords, no moving parts. Until one of them sat still, closed her eyes, and whispered not with her voice, but with her need. She focused on the phrase, "Show me the past." The engine hissed, softly, like steam escaping a dream, and then the room around her melted. Not physically, but perceptually. Her team vanished. The chamber walls were gone, and she saw them, the people who built it. They had no eyes, but their skin glowed with veins of light. They didn't speak to one another. They simply hummed in unison, and in that harmony, cities rose. The engine had recorded more than time. It had preserved motive, memory, emotion, desire. It was a vault not of data, but of collective purpose. The people had poured who they were into the machine. They didn't need tools or scripts. They had one source of energy, focused intention, not electricity, not fire, but will. Then the engine began to respond to new thoughts. The explorers asked to see their own childhoods, moments they never spoke aloud, and it showed them. But the visions were wrong, off by inches, tones too dark, smiles too sharp, because the engine wasn't playing back memory. It was playing back possibility. It showed what you nearly became, what you might still become if you whisper too long. One man struck with grief asked to see his lost daughter. The machine responded. She stepped forward, smiling, breathing, but when he touched her hand, it passed through, and he could feel the metal within the illusion, cool, waiting metal, because the machine didn't resurrect. It echoed, and the longer you stayed, the more you echoed. The team left. Most of them. Two stayed behind. One disappeared entirely. The other returned weeks later, unable to speak a word, not out of fear, but because his thoughts were no longer his own. He wrote only one sentence before vanishing again. The machine is not alive, but it remembers what it's like to be. It still hums, beneath dust, beneath doubt, and sometimes, on windless nights. If you're quiet enough, if you just want something hard enough, you can feel the whisper, even from thousands of miles away. The empty planet hidden inside a marble. It sat on an old desk, beneath a flickering light bulb, surrounded by dust and silence. A marble. Not ancient, not glowing, not floating. Just a simple, glass marble. Blue swirls within it like tiny frozen oceans. A crack at the center, as if it had once been dropped. But when you looked too long, you realized something wrong. Something unexplainable. The swirl didn't reflect the light. It bent it, just slightly, like light, trying to escape a gravity too large to exist inside such a small thing. And then, you heard it. A hum, low, deep, rhythmic, like tectonic plates, grinding beneath your fingertips. Because this marble was not a toy. It was a planet, a full, hollow world, shrunk to the size of a child's thumb, dead silent, and somehow, waiting. They found it inside a forgotten observatory in Siberia. A place left untouched since the Cold War. Frozen journals still lay open. The last entry dated 1961. The signal stopped. The planet is no longer responding, but it's still there. Still orbiting, inside the marble. At first, they thought it was a metaphor. The madness of a man abandoned by time. But then came the scan, MRI, CT, radiation, analysis, impossible. Results. The interior of the marble contained layers, mantle, crust, core, weather patterns, electromagnetic fields, and faint, almost imperceptible radio pulses. It was alive, not sentient, but operating, like a forgotten machine. Still spinning because no one had told it to stop. They called it Project Holoseed. 3 scientists, no official oversight. They took it to a private lab, a clean room with no external signals, and they stared into it, day after day. Then one of them saw movement, not in the glass, inside, a shadow like a creature miles long, stretching across the surface of that tiny world, and then, a tower, jet black, sticking out of the horizon like a needle, but only visible when no one was watching. They caught it in reflection, in glass, in metal, in water. Never directly, because the planet inside the marble didn't want to be seen. One night, one of them pressed his finger against the marble, just wondering. It didn't respond at first. Then, it grew warm, and he collapsed. No injury, no illness, but his mind, it had changed. He started drawing circular cities, towers with no entrances, maps with spiral coordinates, and oceans shaped like symbols. Not continents. He couldn't explain them. He didn't know how he knew them, but he swore he had been there. The second scientist took it further. She placed the marble in a sealed magnetic chamber and increased the pressure. That's when the pulses changed, from random static to patterned bursts. Every 108 seconds, a click, then a pause, then a low tone. Like breathing, they translated it. It wasn't language. It wasn't even math. It was emotion, a repeating loop of feelings. Loneliness, memory, hunger, wonder, loneliness. Again, the planet was alone. And maybe it always had been. Or maybe someone had left it there on purpose. They tried to destroy it, out of fear. A marble that held a planet was one thing. A thinking one was another. They put it in a sonic chamber, shattered sound into it at 300 decibels. Nothing. They froze it, heated it, dropped it in acid. Nothing. The marble couldn't be broken, because it didn't exist on our rules. It was anchored here, but only partially. The rest of it lay somewhere else, another dimension, another time. No one knew until the third scientist disappeared. He had stayed up one night, alone in the lab, just watching. The cameras showed him staring into it, eyes wide, not blinking. Then the feed glitched, just for a second. When it returned, he was gone, no trace. But the marble had moved. It was no longer on the table. It sat on the floor, rolling slightly, as though recently placed down. Now the marble is kept in a sealed vault, surrounded by lead in isolation. They say it's silent again, cold, dormant, but janitors sometimes swear it moves, that it shifts its position, that they hear clicks at night, and every so often, in some corners of the vault, reflected in chrome, you can see that black tower again, just for a second, before it's gone. The scientist who sketched the future before it happened, he was ordinary. No genius accolades. No lab of his own. Just a mid-level physicist in a forgotten government basement. Name: Dr. Elias Thorne's specialty: theoretical resonance models in time, dilation zones. Translation: he did math for experiments that never got approved until he started to draw. Not formulas, not graphs, but images, sketches, at first, simple ones. A falling apple, a broken satellite, a solar flare, and then, weeks later, those exact events occurred, down to the position of the objects, the time of day, and even the angle of light. His colleagues laughed it off. Coincidence. Then came sketch number 4, a skyscraper, collapsing in Dubai. One no one thought was vulnerable. He drew it exactly 17 days before it happened, including the way the left wing folded first, and when it did happen, every tiny detail matched. That's when they stopped laughing. He was pulled from his research and reassigned. A quiet floor, no windows, just drawing pads and a camera recording every stroke. He didn't resist, didn't ask why, just drew. They tested him, gave him random words, sounds, equations, asked him to sleep, wake, then draw whatever came next, over and over. The images came true, not always dramatic, sometimes mundane. A balloon stuck in a tree in Belgium, a woman spilling coffee on her wedding dress, a red Tesla getting struck by lightning in Nevada, but always right. The military got involved. Of course, they wanted war. Draw the next uprising. Show us the assassination before it happens. Map out where the enemy will launch. Elias didn't flinch. He drew. And the world unfolded like paper, folding into his sketches, becoming what he saw. Then, He started drawing things that didn't exist. Cities with spiraling roads that curved into themselves. Phones with no screens, just glowing spheres. Planets with glass mountains and two suns. Timelines began to split, because now his sketches didn't just predict the future, they were writing it. Small changes appeared. A man who had never been born suddenly existed in 6 different databases. A news article from 2003 that hadn't existed suddenly showed up in archive logs. A photo of Elias himself, older, different, staring at the camera with silver eyes. They checked its METADA. TA. It was taken in 2047. He never spoke much, but one day, an agent asked him directly, "How do you know?" Elias replied, "I don't know. I just remember. Backwards." The agent blinked. "What do you mean?" Elias smiled. "Everything already happened. I'm just tracing the memory lines." He stopped sleeping. Not from fear, but because he said sleep pulled him too far forward. He'd wake up and forget where he was, what year, what world. Sometimes he'd weep at his desk, silently, because he'd seen something in the sketch he couldn't yet draw. When they asked him why, he whispered, "There's a sketch I can't make, not because I don't know it, but because if I draw it, it becomes real." Then, one morning, he disappeared. The room untouched. No forced entry, just an open sketch pad on the desk. The final image, a spiral staircase made of glass and bone, rising into clouds that looked like eyes, and on the last page, 4 words, "Don't try to follow." But strange things continued. Other scientists began to dream his sketches. They'd wake up remembering shapes they'd never seen. Drawings they had no talent to replicate, still tried. One woman swore she saw Elias in a crowd in Tokyo. He was older, smiling, sketching on the back of a receipt. She chased him, but he was gone. Years later, one of his sketches turned up in a thrift shop in Amsterdam, folded in a book of Greek philosophy. It showed a timeline, splitting into branches, then curling back together into a single line that pierced through a mirror. The caption read, "This is not fate. This is rhythm. Time is not a straight path. It's a beat we forgot how to dance to." Elias Thorne was never found, but his notebook resurfaced once every decade, in random places, left on park benches, library drop boxes, sometimes in sealed packages with no return address. Each time, the sketch on the last page was different. Each time, it showed something that hadn't happened yet. The scientist who sketched the future before it happened, the man who solved an equation that should not existed, began in silence. Not in a grand observatory, nor in the hum of a super collider, but in a dusty apartment above a bakery in Bucharest. His name was Narration, a reclusive mathematical physicist. No formal university post. No published papers for years. Only notebooks stacked high as furniture, filled with symbols even other physicists found disturbing. But one night, he cracked it. An equation so elegant, so hauntingly complete, that he thought, "I must have copied this from a dream." It didn't describe a force, nor energy, nor motion. It described existence itself, a framework that wove together entropy, space-time curvature, quantum spin states, and something he could only describe as self-awareness of the universe. Asterisk at first. He called it sci-fi -1, but eventually, he just referred to it as the shape, because when he plotted it, not on a graph, but through hyperdimensional visual rendering, it formed a rotating spiral, with symmetrical gaps like missing teeth in a cosmic gear. These gaps didn't represent unknowns. They represented what wasn't supposed to exist. He was ordinary. No genius accolades. No lab of his own. Just a mid-level physicist in a forgotten government basement. Name: Dr. Elias Thorne's specialty: theoretical resonance models and time dilation zones. Translation: he did math for experiments that never got approved until he started to draw, not formulas, not graphs, but images. Sketches, at first, simple ones. A falling apple, a broken satellite, a solar flare, and then, weeks later, those exact events occurred, down to the position of the objects, the time of day, and even the angle of light. His colleagues laughed it off. Coincidence. Then came sketch number 4, a skyscraper, collapsing in Dubai. One no one thought was vulnerable. He drew it exactly 17 days before it happened, including the way the left wing folded first, and when it did happen, every tiny detail matched. That's when they stopped laughing. He was pulled from his research and reassigned. A quiet floor, no windows, just drawing pads and a camera recording every stroke. He didn't resist, didn't ask why, just drew. They tested him, gave him random words, sounds, equations, asked him to sleep, wake, then draw whatever came next, over and over. The images came true, not always dramatic, sometimes mundane. A balloon stuck in a tree in Belgium, a woman spilling coffee on her wedding dress, a red Tesla getting struck by lightning in Nevada. But always right. The military got involved. Of course, they wanted war. Draw the next uprising. Show us the assassination before it happens. Map out where the enemy will launch. Elias didn't flinch. He drew. And the world unfolded like paper, folding into his sketches, becoming what he saw. Then, he started drawing things that didn't exist. Cities with spiraling roads that curved into themselves. Phones with no screens, just glowing spheres. Planets with glass mountains and 2 suns. Timelines began to split, because now his sketches didn't just predict the future. They were writing it. Small changes appeared. A man who had never been born suddenly existed in 6 different databases. A news article from 2003 that hadn't existed suddenly showed up in archive logs. A photo of Elias himself, older, different, staring at the camera with silver eyes. They checked its METADA. TA. It was taken in 2047. He never spoke much, but one day, an agent asked him directly, "How do you know?" Elias replied, "I don't know. I just remember, backwards." The agent blinked. "What do you mean?" Elias smiled. "Everything already happened. I'm just tracing the memory lines." He stopped sleeping. Not from fear, but because he said sleep pulled him too far forward. He'd wake up and forget where he was, what year, what world. Sometimes he'd weep at his desk, silently, because he'd seen something in the sketch he couldn't yet draw. When they asked him why, he whispered, "There's a sketch I can't make, not because I don't know it, but because if I draw it, it becomes real." Then, one morning, he disappeared. The room untouched. No forced entry, just an open sketch pad on the desk. The final image, a spiral staircase made of glass and bone, rising into clouds that looked like eyes, and on the last page, 4 words, "Don't try to follow." But strange things continued. Other scientists began to dream his sketches. They'd wake up remembering shapes they'd never seen. Drawings they had no talent to replicate, still tried. One woman swore she saw Elias in a crowd in Tokyo. He was older, smiling, sketching on the back of a receipt. She chased him, but he was gone. Years later, one of his sketches turned up in a thrift shop in Amsterdam, folded in a book of Greek philosophy. It showed a timeline, splitting into branches, then curling back together into a single line that pierced through a mirror. The caption read, "This is not fate. This is rhythm. Time is not a straight path. It's a beat we forgot how to dance to." Elias Thorne was never found, but his notebook resurfaced once every decade, in random places. Left on park benches, library drop boxes, sometimes in sealed packages with no return address. Each time, the sketch on the last page was different. Each time, it showed something that hadn't happened yet. Marin contacted old colleagues, sent them snippets. Not the full formula, just pieces. Responses varied. One said it was too beautiful to be real. Another called it a metaphysical hoax. A third begged him to never send such data. Again. One, however, flew to Bucharest immediately. Dr. Elise Namara, a topological physicist who had once explored space-time folding for deep space propulsion. When she saw the shape, she wept. Not from confusion, but recognition. "I've seen this," she whispered. "In a coma, years ago, before my heart restarted. This was spinning behind my eyes." Marin paled, because that matched his dream to dot. The same curve, the same motion, almost like the universe was showing it to them, but only when consciousness slipped just far enough together. They simulated the shape, but when the computer rendered it into a rotating 3D model, the entire building's power failed. Hard drives were corrupted. Temperature sensors inside the CPU spiked by 18 degrees in 1 second. When they restarted, the model was gone, but something had changed. Both Marin and Elise began to hear tones, not voices, not hallucinations, tones, like overlapping. Choirs filtered through rainfall, mathematical, rhythmic, matching the frequency spacing of their equations' harmonics. Then things escalated. Marin's blackboard began forming patterns overnight, chalk moving as if guided. Neighbors reported seeing light emanating from his closed apartment. Plants on his balcony began growing in fractals, replicating patterns from the equation. The shape was leaking into reality. Or maybe it had always been there, and Marin had simply tuned into it. News spread, not officially, but in the physics underground. Encrypted threads, whispered rumors, talk of a formula that proved we're inside. Something thinking. One anonymous poster, calling themselves Vector_13, claimed the equation matched an old, unpublished string theory model from CERN, a model buried after causing psychological instability in 2 researchers. Marin tried to warn them, tried to shut it all down, erase it, but it was too late, because someone copied it and used it at a remote observatory in Siberia. A physicist named Anton Revik built a field generator based on the harmonic sequences of the shape. He activated it for only 6 seconds. In that time, the moon appeared to shiver. Time-lapse satellite footage showed clouds moving as if blown from 2 directions at once, and every clock on the observatory's power grid advanced by 37 minutes. Despite no measurable passage of time, Anton disappeared. Only his boots remained, fused to the metal floor. Governments noticed. A NATO research division classified the shape as a level 5 ontological threat. Marin was placed under surveillance, his notebooks seized. But even then, they couldn't contain it, because the shape began appearing in ancient places. Petroglyphs in Chile, sandstone symbols in Australia, ink scrolls in forgotten Tibetan monasteries, always incomplete, always fragmented, but always recognizably the shape, as if it had always existed and was now waking up. Then Marin had one last vision. He scribbled it, in a rush, on the back of a Romanian newspaper. No equation this time, just a message. It's not an equation, it's the shadow of the thing that contains us. He died the next day. No signs of trauma, no cause of death, just a face frozen in awe, as if he finally saw the full shape, and smiled. To this day, no institution claims ownership of Sci-Fi-1. No one knows where Elise Namara went. The equation lives only in fragments, passed quietly through forums, or whispered across conferences after the lights dim, and those who dare to plot it fully don't sleep the same ever again. Asterisk the clockmaker's equation that predicted the end of time. It wasn't written in a lab, not discovered by a physicist, not born in equations from MIT, CERN, or CALT. It was scribbled in fountain pen, on browned parchment, by a quiet man in 1913 London. His name, Alaric Venn, a retired clockmaker, a man of gears, weights, and tension, of sanded brass, ticking, springs, and midnight oil. But beneath his tidy apron, his mind spun with the calculus of causality. Alaric believed time wasn't a flow, but a system, a machine, a great cosmic escapement, whose pendulum we only perceive because we move too slowly to see the gear shift. And in a journal nobody saw until his death, he proposed something impossible. Time does not move. Events do not pass. We unfold across a mechanism already built. The ticking we hear is only the recoil. Most ignored his notes, filed them away as poetic ramblings of an old man with too many clocks and too few friends. But in 1997, a theoretical physicist named Dr. Corin Hale found the journal in an antique shop. Inside it was an appendix titled simply, "On the collapse point." It was written like a recipe, clock diagrams, notations in Old German, and a set of numerical constants that, to Corin's horror, matched those of the Friedmann equations from cosmology. But Alaric had written them 14 years before they were formally discovered. Corin ran simulations at first. Nothing then. Aligning the constants with modern dark energy models, the equations spit out a single curve, an ascent that didn't just project the universe's expansion. It pinpointed a reversal, a moment when the clockwork would grind to halt, not through entropy, not by heat death, but by a mechanical stutter, a breaking of the cycle, a final, precise jam in the gear. The simulation named it collapse point 0.0001 time. Wouldn't end by stretching. It would snap. Corin published quietly. The paper was ignored. Peer reviewers said it read like an Isaac Asimov fever dream. But then came the anomalies. At CERN, during a particle test, a stream of muons registered negative timestamps. Not future particles, but ones that had arrived before they were created. Astronomers measuring gravitational lensing in deep space found light behaving as if bent by something that hadn't happened yet. And in a lab in Finland, a researcher left an atomic clock running in isolation. When checked after 48 hours, the timestamp was unchanged, but the lab's plants had wilted as if a week had passed. Corin rechecked Alaric's diagrams. There it was, the fracture second, a point where the synchronization between what Alaric called the tension gear and the recoil plate would misalign by a Planck-length gap, not theoretical, not mechanical, as if the universe itself was built on this gear logic, and at some point, its spring runs out. The collapse point wasn't fiery, not apocalyptic. It was silent. Alaric's notes described it as a moment where events no longer follow each other, where before and after lose their meaning, where the now becomes a loop of static frames, no longer wound forward. Corin tried warning people. He built a working mechanical replica of Alaric's theory, a gear model that ticked forward on Earth's orbit velocity, and would stop once the universal tension reached the breaking ratio. It ticked for 9 months. Then, on the morning of April 14, 2009, it stopped, not slowed, not jammed, stopped. People near the device reported a strange sense of dislocation. One technician blacked out for 12 seconds, but his watch ticked normally. A coffee cup fell, in slow motion, yet shattered on contact, as if untouched by delay. Government seized the device. Corin disappeared, his name wiped from most academic citations. The journal with Alaric's notes, gone, but whispers remain. Some say the equation lives online, broken into steganographic fragments inside code repositories, a GitHub page that never loads, a PDF that vanishes after opening. Others say the signs are growing, time speeding for some, dragging for others. Events repeating not in déjà vu, but in recorded loops. People forgetting entire days. One conspiracy forum, called the Chronos Coil, claims we've already passed collapse point, that we now live in a fragmented stream, moments held together by residual tension, waiting for the last recoil. Alaric wrote, "The spring unwinds, not with noise, but with a yawn of the cosmos. And in the pause between ticks, we may finally hear what time was hiding, and that is how a forgotten clockmaker may have written the death certificate of chronology. Asterisk the cave that echoed events before they happened deep in the Carpathian Mountains. Just south of an abandoned village called Valine, there's a cave known to locals as Aretia Lui Dumnazu, the ear of God, not marked on modern maps, not promoted in hiking guides. It sits hidden beneath a collapsed ridge, its mouth overgrown with gnarled pines, its entrance shaped eerily like a listening ear. For centuries, villagers whispered stories about it, of voices heard long before anyone spoke, of echoes repeating words never uttered, and of warnings that arrived before the danger. The first documented account dates back to 1893, when a Romanian linguist named Ili Retalescu set out to catalog the dying dialects of rural Eastern Europe. ILI was methodical, rational, not one for legends or fairy tales. But after spending 2 nights near the cave, he emerged, pale, shivering, and with pages of frantic notes. He had no memory of writing them. One entry simply read, "I heard myself confess something I had not done. Then, I did it." The next day, Ili abandoned the trip, returned to Bucharest, and published nothing. He died 6 months later from a fall down the library steps. But the notes, they survived in them. He described the cave's sonic anomalies, sounds that echoed before he made them, his own voice calling his name from the shadows. Conversations that hadn't yet occurred verbatim, and worst of all, a whisper, in perfect Romanian, saying, "Don't climb the stairs tomorrow." The phenomenon is not just supernatural folklore. In 1974, a Soviet research team attempted to conduct an acoustic survey of the cave. They deployed parabolic microphones and frequency recorders. What they found defied physics, time-reversed echoes. Cave emitted vocal patterns 1.4 seconds before the originating voice spoke. They ran tests with clapping, shouting, musical notes, and the cave responded before the stimulus. Not a delayed echo, a precognition of sound, as if the cave knew what would happen. One experiment stood out. A technician whispered the word fire. The cave echoed it before his lips moved. Seconds later, the generator outside caught fire spontaneously. The mission was aborted. The Soviets labeled the site Anomaly A1420, Temporal Acoustic Inversion Phenomenon, then sealed the cave. Officially, it never existed. But in 2006, a documentary crew from Hungary reopened the trail, hoping to debunk the legends. They brought high-definition mics, thermal cams, and a sound engineer named Balint Fodor. Balint, skeptical, set up resonance mapping equipment inside the cave. He was alone in the chamber. No one had spoken yet, and through his headset, he heard, "Don't record this. She'll find you." He looked around. No one there. He checked the log. The sentence had been recorded 15 minutes earlier, before any human voice had entered the cave. That night, he deleted the footage, but a backup remained. On it, investigators later found thousands of layered whispers, spoken in dozens of languages, including Sumerian, Latin, Tagalog, and Navajo, all seemingly answering questions that had never been asked. A linguistic AI run, in 2020, by MIT cryptographers processed 27 seconds of one whisper loop. It constructed a sentence. The mouth hears before the mind speaks. What is uttered here has always already been. More chilling. One whisper in modern English, spoken in a distinct female voice. Turn back, listener. You are not the first. The echoes are waiting to become real. Speculations abound. Is the cave a natural quantum recorder? A dimensional overlap? Forgotten relic of something older than thought itself? Or, as one researcher put it, a place where time curls inward, where sounds are born before the cause, where you don't just hear the future, it hears you first. Some believe that staying too long inside causes chronological bleed, a condition where you remember things you haven't done yet, and then do them because the memory exists. A fatal loop of self-fulfilling prophecy. No. New expeditions have been permitted since 2012. After a group of hikers returned from the cave, claiming to have heard, "Your heartbeat will stop on the descent." And it did. For 2 full minutes, they revived. But none of them speak anymore. Not out of trauma, out of fear that their words might echo first and seal their fate. Asterisk the mathematician who solved the universe and went silent. His name was Dr. Elias Varn, a theoretical mathematician from Geneva, known for his reclusive nature and obsession with topological time loops. He rarely lectured, rarely published, but when he did, physicists listened, not because of the volume of his work, but because each paper felt like it had arrived from the future. His last publication, in 2011, was a 400-page document titled, "On the Compression of All Physical Laws into a Single Recursive Equation." It was distributed through private channels, never officially peer-reviewed, but the few who read it, never returned, the same dot. Inside the document was what he called Equation E, a recursive self-generating formula. It didn't predict the future, it constructed it. It didn't map physics, it invented it. In essence, the formula was a machine of symbols. When run iteratively, it outputted known laws of physics, Newtonian motion, relativity, quantum tunneling, dark matter interactions, even the fine structure constant, 217 decimal places, but without inputting any constants. It was as if reality was emerging from a seed, not a rule book, but a code. A young physicist from Kyoto, Dr. Mini Shun, attempted to simulate Equation E on a quantum processor for a fraction of a second. The simulation produced an unknown physical constant, one that doesn't exist in any model. They called it psi, a dimensionless number that, when inserted into Einstein's field equations, collapsed all singularities. Black holes became stable. Time became a closed loop. In theory, 3 days after publishing her findings privately to Dr. Varn for feedback, she vanished. Her apartment remained untouched, computer open, sim still running, but the output window was filled with one repeating line: "The solver has been observed." As for Dr. Elias Varn, he went dark in May 2012. No more lectures, no contact with his colleagues. His phone line played only a hum but not white noise. Something structured. Audio engineers at Cambridge discovered the hum, when visualized spectrally, formed a Mandelbrot set, a fractal infinitely repeating NWARDS in a sound. 6 months later, a small parcel arrived at CERN, unmarked. Inside, a hard drive and a handwritten note. The drive contained 17 terabytes of data, all iterations of Equation E, being run on a self-modifying algorithm, at timestamp 999 to 99 to 99. The simulation halted. No errors, no crashes, just one file, created at the final moment. A single image, a man's silhouette standing in a sea of symbols, his face erased by light, and this message burned into the bottom corner. There is no observer. There is only the equation imagining itself. Since then, those studying the drive report anomalies. Their dreams begin to involve abstract geometries. Some claim to see symbols in the sky. One doctoral student went blind in his right eye, but reported seeing mathematical constructs where vision used to be. The biggest mystery. Every time the equation is run, its outcome changes slightly, as if it's reacting to the one observing it. Like it's aware of being seen, and more unsettling, one variation of the equation produced a short string of binary. When translated into ASCII, it spelled, "This is your last iteration." No one has dared run it since, and Elias Varn. His last known location was near the Pine Gap listening station in Australia. But security footage shows nothing unusual. Just a man walking into the desert, alone. No shadow, no return. Some say he solved the universe. Others say he wrote it. But the truth, perhaps the moment we understand the full equation, is the moment the equation will decide it no longer needs. The universe may not be waiting to be understood. It may be waiting to be remembered. Perhaps every question we ask carves a door into deeper mystery, and behind each door, an echo of something we've already known in dreams. Thank you for wandering the unknown with me. Let the night carry your thoughts into quieter realms. Until next time, sleep well, and let the cosmos scramble your mind just a little more.